Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. What are we looking at here? We're looking at the price of Bitcoin 4-hour charts on Coinbase. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to be looking at the price of BTC. We'll be looking at the big picture chart. This is kind of a weekly update. The halving is approaching. It is 7 days away, approximately here. 7 days, 4 hours, 11 minutes, and 26 seconds, and give or take. And you know, this is a big one. I think it's kind of an interesting scenario, and not in the sense of like, oh my God, the price is going to rally in the next week, but in the sense that the amount of BTC out there already, 18 million out of the 21, right? 87% of the mined coins are in existence, and the inflation curve, as I often talk about, this is kind of the big thing that BTC has had going for it since its inception. But the fact that this curve really starts to flatten out here after this halving, the number of new BTC coming out will be a big long-term, what do you say, benefit to the price of Bitcoin because of simple supply-demand economics, right? Obviously, there's less BTC, and if miners aren't dumping as much to pay for overhead and all that good stuff, if people want more BTC, then there's only one thing to do: price got to go up. And so traditionally, the price has rallied over the longer term after the halving, right? Not before. You get a little bit of a pre-halving pump, and then you tend to see a little bit of a post-halving pullback, post-halving dump. And then after that, things settle out, and then the big rally really begins. Will we see that again? Personally, I think we will. If you look at the weekly chart, we zoom out here, and we've been looking at this for quite some time. There's this, big bullish pattern still setting up in the big picture on the weekly charts, and would not surprise me to see some pullback after the halving. How deep that goes, or if it just goes flat, it's anyone's guess. Maybe we rally into the halving and then pull back afterwards. But the idea is, after we break out of this, right, and the key numbers to be looking at here, the key price points are really this 10.5 zone, right, this 10,500 BTC level. If it starts to hold above that, maybe get a pullback, retest, and then get going, that's going to be a nice breakout on this weekly chart. That'll be a big picture view. And again, I'm talking weekly view. I'm not talking the tradable, 1 hour, 4 hour charts and all that good stuff. I'm talking about kind of the longer term hold type of mentality here. At that point, things really start to look interesting, and yeah, at that point you can see that big rally. Now, in terms of historical rallies, right, the halvings, if you look at those statistics, have produced these enormous percentage moves in terms of the amount of gain they produce, right, 10,000% type moves. Personally, I don't expect it to be that big of a move this time around. I think it'll still be a big move, but is it going to be that 10,000% gainer? At this price point, each halving rally, post-halving rally, in my opinion, will become smaller than the last one from a percentage basis. Dollar-wise, yeah, it could be bigger, obviously, right? If it goes from 20,000 to 40,000, like, that's massive. But is it going to be like, going from $50 to $1,000? Maybe not, right? Is it going to go from going from 1,000 to 20,000? Maybe not. But could we see a double, triple, quadruple? We certainly could, right? And so you got to factor that in. And so I'm not in the camp of, oh, we're going to get another, 4-digit percentage type move. If we do, fantastic. I'm not in that camp personally. I'm still bullish long term, but I'm not in the we're going to get $1 million BTC camp. And for a lot of reasons, which, maybe we don't need to go into all that right now. Let's just look at the charts, look at the price, and see what is happening here in the near term. So looking at the short-term view, or I'll dial it back slowly. I'll start with the daily, and then we'll go into the 4-hour view here. Daily has just kind of been in a holding pattern since that nice little rally that we've seen here in the last couple of weeks. Of course, it ended in this big reversal climactic day, hit 9,400 and then very quickly pulled back, and over the weekend just kind of was chop and flop, bouncing a little bit, but it's still technically in an uptrend, still moving above this ascending daily 10 EMA, which is above the daily 22 EMA, but it is running into some near-term resistance here let me highlight that here for us, right? If we look at this zone, right, this was kind of the next big target, right? It was first, it was the 8K range, which it just blasted right through that 8,300, and then above that, my personal target was around 9,200. Obviously, it overshot that a little bit, but you know, it didn't close above 9,200 on a daily basis. In fact, the highest it closed was just around 9K. So my target was around that 9,200, and we're kind of just sitting tight below that. So the question is, do we finally get a pullback? Does it just continue to chop around here? The fact that we have a halving coming up is a little bit of a wild card. Maybe it's priced in, right? Normally, if it weren't for that, normally I'd be saying I'm a little bit more defensive here. I'd probably start scaling out or hedging a little bit in looking for a pullback. The halving kind of throws a little bit of a spin on that here, in my opinion. So it could go either way. Now, looking at the metrics here, if we look at the Bitcoin trading bot status, which is two of them, right? There's the daily strategy and the 4-hour strategy. And this trades around this bull momentum index, this proprietary indicator that I've developed. The daily strategy is still showing long. It's been long since the 23rd of April, which, you know, basically caught this breakout from this little, let me draw it here, from this little symmetrical pattern that we were looking at on that daily view. The 23rd is right here. So on that breakout day, coincidentally, the bot went long on that day, and it turned out to be a pretty good call. Obviously caught that next move up from basically 7,400 to 9,400. So $2,000 move, which, you know, comes out to around a 28% move in just over a week or so. So it was a nice little bit of a rally there. It's still long from that perspective, but obviously the daily time frame moves a lot slower than the shorter time frames. The 4-hour strategy, interestingly enough, went flat yesterday, early my time. So it's been flat for, I would say probably about 36 hours now at this point. You know, not quite 2 days, but it's been flat. And so if we dial it in here a little bit, looking at this 4-hour view, it's just kind of in this holding pattern. Now, personally, I think this looks a little bit on the bearish side. If it were, you know, again, all things considered, if I was just looking at this in isolation. And the reason I say that is because after the move we've had, we saw this big distribution candle, which did lead to a pullback, a nice little rally. But then what I was looking at was this kind of weird arm pattern, this wedge that it starts to build. And let me move the moving averages off so it'll be a little bit cleaner to see. There you go. And you can see it's just kind of this wedging up on very low volume. It did overshoot to the upside, but then just kind of quickly rolled over. We're getting a bounce again into that. So like another little bit of a retracement from that. I'm watching this lower trend line because I think if this is lost, which equates to around 8,800 or so, if that's lost, then I think the second leg down will begin on the daily chart, which will maybe finally kind of pull back a little bit further than we have seen in the past. First level down is going to be this support candle down here, and then of course down in this range. Does it hit 7Ks again? You know, certainly not out of the realm of possibility. In the big scheme of things, that's not that big of a move. If you look at some fib retracement levels, let me pull that back on here. If we look at some fib retracement levels from this entire move, you know, there's a lot of room that it could go, and it just kind of depends on where you factor in the impulse move, right? Is it this thing here, 32% gets you down to the, or 38% gets you down to about 7,500. If you use the exact wick low, which was the bottom of the impulse move down, you know, that's a little bit deeper, it puts it around 7,300. And so it just kind of depends on how you're looking at that. I'm more inclined to go with just pure support resistance levels for now, because that tends to be your first line in the sand, if you will. If the pullback gets deeper, then yeah, at that point I'll start looking at some fib levels, that sort of thing. But for now, this is what I'm watching. I'm kind of watching this little shakeout. Now again, on the daily, just kind of going sideways. If this starts to go symmetrical here, you have a low point here at 8,400, then you have a swing low here this morning at around 8,520. Then if that holds, then you by definition have a symmetrical setup here, and at that point you're just looking for a break one way or the other, bull or bear break, right? And so the two levels, if you're looking at that symmetrical pattern, is basically today's swing low or a close above 91.50. that put it on a bull break on the upside. So, you know, kind of in between those levels, just kind of wait and see at this point. As I said, I'm a little bit more inclined to be on the bearish side if I was just purely looking at the chart in isolation without factoring in any sort of potential sentiment shift or having pump or anything like that. That'd be my inclination. But for now, gonna have to just wait and see how this one plays out here. So I wouldn't be a buyer here. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like if I wanted to buy, I'd probably just trade the symmetrical breakout one way or the other, right? If it was a bull break over 91.50, then I'd go long. You got to go long with the trend. Otherwise, maybe you just sit it out, look for a pullback, or if you're more inclined to be active, then you trade the downside here on the pullback, and then of course looking for a break of 8,600 or so as your first targets. And so that's how I'd be looking at it from a trading perspective. And again, daily chart looks fine. I think we've had a good rally, but near term, I'm kind of leaning defensive, right? That's just kind of my thoughts here. Now let's look big picture, right? Because obviously Bitcoin has been a little bit, you know, people say a little bit in sync with the SPYs and all that in the big picture market. But if you look at, you know, the big drop we've had and the bounce we've had since then, there's certainly a lot of factors in play there, right? There's, you know, if you look at the reason it dropped, right, the pandemic and the economic shutdown, liquidity event that happened, obviously that impacted more than just BTC. And these are just crazy times. Oil going negative on the futures markets, and you know, just stocks getting hammered. And so that's, you know, that's been a factor here for the big TC picture as well. Very much a macro point of view in terms of things went down together, it bounced. Now, obviously, from a percentage basis, had a much stronger recovery than most of the stock market, but there's some other factors in play there too, right? Maybe it's finally being that defensive mechanism, that asset that's kind of the safe haven play. Obviously, the halving should be a factor. And so there's just kind of a lot of that we have in there. But, you know, the big picture is I'm still within this big triangle. We're right near the top of this descending trend line. Of course, trend lines are subjective, but, you know, if you look at the general trend, we came pretty close to that, which was quite the move. Honestly, higher than I thought we were going to go. I was thinking we'd probably hit maybe 8K and then start to stall out, but it hit all the targets on the way up, which is just amazing. So that's good. Very bullish from that perspective. The fact that it was bought up so quickly from that 4K drop all the way back up, basically erasing that one massive red week and blasting right through that. Just from a technical perspective, that's just very bullish. The fact that it recovered so quickly in the big picture just shows a lot of benefit for the bulls there, which is why I'm thinking if you do get a pullback, I'm not expecting the massive rejected from this line and just going all the way down. I would be very surprised. I would be very surprised if it went that far. Again, I'm thinking you just get a little bit of a pullback, which ultimately leads to higher prices after the halving. That's my thought there in terms of where I think is going to happen. But going back to the resistance levels, right, the big picture view here on the weekly, that 10.5 level holding above that on the weekly chart is a turning point. I mean, that's an inflection price level. And the history of Bitcoin, again, when you look at the long-term view, the amount of time that it's spent above 10K is small in comparison to its entire history, right? If you look at the history of Bitcoin, which, you know, technically, yes, it's been around for 10 years or whatever. In terms of like mainstream volume and trading, much less than that. But even if you look at the trading history of, say, a Bitstamp or a you know, even just Coinbase, right, going back to 2015, even in light of that, a small percentage of time has been spent above this 10K, right? In the history of Bitcoin, it's something like 170 days out of the 10 years, right? So like 6 months, less than 6 months. And, you know, even if you factor that out, right, it's still a small percentage. And so just not a lot of time, which is why I'm saying if it starts to hold above that on the weekly chart, that just looks really positive from a long-term view, right? You look at starting to claim this resistance level again, starting to break this downtrend, people would start to say this is a bull break from this big symmetrical pattern potentially, right? So I think there'd be a lot more positive sentiment coming into the space, and it would honestly trigger some bullish technical breakout levels, which could kind of feed on itself and kick off that next rally. The fact that it would happen post-halving is actually quite positive. I'd rather have it after the halving than before, because then that would just kind of align with how it's traditionally responded to some of those supply changes over the long term. So those are my thoughts here. Near term, you know, again, it's a trader's game right now. It's been a little bit range bound after that nice rally we saw for the last week and a half. I'm thinking maybe some more pullback is in order from a very near term perspective. So let's look at some other names here. I'm going to go with the Bitcoin dominance chart here first. Let's go to the daily view on that. And this is interesting here. So it rallied right up to around that 68% mark, which is what I was looking for. And then it had a pullback, which turned into that altcoin rally. And it's interesting to see that it bounced right off of that 64.5, 65 level. I was watching this level to see if that would be a place to bounce. I didn't expect it to bounce that high. And so was that the pre-halving rallying? Or are we going to finally see some rotation into some of those other names, as is often the case? That's what I'm hoping for, right? That's what I'm thinking. You know, you've had this kind of drop, you had the bounce, made a lower high. If it paused here and made a lower high, that'd be ideal, because then at that point you could expect to see some altcoin outperformance, especially with the halving behind us in a week or so. Then you could see some of that rotation into some of these other alts, especially the big cap names. They tend to kind of lead the pack there. So that's what I'm going to be watching for here, is does this kind of fizzle out here, and then some of the bigger cap names start to get some rotation back into them. Breaking below that 64 would be bullish for those alts, because then I think at that point you're going right back to that 62% and likely lower, which means, you know, alt rally, alt season. I hate to use that term, alt season, but maybe, right? Maybe that's what we're going to be seeing here. So keep an eye on this here. Getting back over that 68 would really surprise me there on the BTC dominant side of things. All right, looking at the big cap names here, I'm going to start with ETH, and then I'm going to go with XRP, always getting dumped on Ripple, and we'll go with ETH first here. So looking at the daily chart, of course, you know, ETH BTC was a winner and a leader on the way up for quite some time, and has been in pullback mode since BTC had its nice little rally in the last week and a half. So you're kind of seeing this rally, but look at how clean this was on a resistance level. I mean, almost to the penny. Multiple attempts on this BTC pair, ETH BTC, you know, hit that level, pulled back, hit that level, pulled back, hit that level, pull. I mean, yes, it could have just as easily broken to the upside, but fourth attempt, man, that's a lot of attempts. And of course, when it finally decided nope, no go, it rolled over and just has lost that support level. But it's so fascinating to see that, I mean, almost exactly to the penny. And what that is, that's just pure distribution, right? That's sellers holding a line in the sand, and every time it hits that point or gets close to it, the sellers show up, pulls back, you get the buyers coming in again, sellers show up, pull back, and so forth, until finally somebody wins the battle, and then it rolls over and creates a little bit more of a trend. And so that you're seeing it in the ETH BTC side here. The daily chart, 10 EMAs crossing below 22. How far it pulls back is anyone's guess, but clearly that trend has started to shift now after a pretty nice run on the ETH side here. Looking at XRP, and if you saw the news, yes, of course, they've been selling. No surprise there. I mean, come on. But looking at XRP there, just nada. Pure price suppression versus Bitcoin, right? I mean, hasn't rallied versus Bitcoin. Obviously, on the USD side, it's had some more rally because of what Bitcoin has done. So if you look at it from that side of things, we'll just go Tether, Bitfinex. It's had a nice little rally from the lows, right? It's come. I mean, if you look at the wick low, which was incredibly low, you know, it's 115%. But even then, it's back up to around 21 cents or so. But it didn't quite get as high in terms of retracing this big drop as some of the other names did, right? And you can see that in the XRP BTC chart. Has not outperformed Bitcoin in the last, other than maybe for a couple days at a time, you know, the big trend has just not outperformed since basically October of 2019. So it's been lagging for quite some time, and it looks like it's about to make new lows versus Bitcoin here, new relative lows, okay, new yearly lows versus BTC here. So until that changes, you know, if I had to pick between the two, I'm still leaning in favor of BTC here. Looking at LTC, the Litecoin, has been another laggard here as of late. Here's the last couple of weeks, basically, or last couple of months, basically since late February, just been lagging versus Bitcoin, and that's also evident in the LTC USD chart. When you look at that, it's just the bounce was not anywhere near as strong as some of these other names. And I kept thinking we're going to get some catch up, right? We're going to finally see them pop and get some outperformance. Maybe we finally do, but for now it just has not been the place, right? They've certainly been the weaklings in terms of some of these bigger moves, right? And clearly evident here, LTC versus Bitcoin certainly lagging behind. EOS, looking at EOS BTC here, a little bit of a laggard there as well. A little oversold here on this daily chart. We'll see if it can finally bounce. Basically coming into this long time support zone. And so if you're liking EOS versus BTC, this is where you want to see it hold. From a long-term perspective, it needs to hold here and start to bounce. But ultimately, it has to crack this, where is it? If I can draw, it's got to crack these guys right here. Jeez, let me get my drawing tool ready. Right there. It's got to get back over that 3,800 level to really start turning this picture, showing a little bit of a double bottom reversal, that sort of thing. But for now, again, lagging versus Bitcoin. EOS USD, going to the Tether side of things, yes, looking much more positive, but again, that's because of the move that Bitcoin has had, right? And so you can see the theme here, like other than a few days at a time or some nice tradable bounces, clearly the winner has been Bitcoin overall. There's been some other alts that have outperformed, but just in general, BTC has been the winner, and that's evident when you look at the BTC dominance charts. It's reclaimed some territory there after bouncing from that 64% as high as 67 and change. Maybe we start to finally see a pullback, which means now I'm keeping an eye on the alts to see which ones start holding up and outperforming versus BTC on the way up here. So looking at some trending names here, this is the automated list produced on the Node Insider's dashboard. It's basically updated real time several times a day. And on the list right now, Power Ledger, Digibyte, Zill, Theta, Dragon, oh my god, name from yesteryear, and some ETC. A lot of small cap names for the most part, but let's go see what's on the charts, how they look for now. Let me just start with, let me see here. Do we really want to look at Dragon? Dragon on KuCoin. All right, nice little pop here in the last day, but I mean, it was well overdue after this monster drop that we've seen here. So no volume, very, very thin name here. I'm going to just quickly cycle through some of these other ones here. Theta has been on a little bit of a rally anyway for some time, but if you look at the daily chart, I know there's some folks that really like watching this name, and I've been talking about just kind of this general resistance here. It's got to get through that hump before it really starts to take off, but man, it's been a nice rally here in the last week. Power. Look at the Power Ledger, very wiki type of name. Not my cup of tea in terms of trading. You kind of get these random pumps out of nowhere, then they fizzle out. But obviously it hit the list there on the trending list. Digibyte has been on a run here as of late. Digibyte, we'll look at Digibyte on the Trex. Digibyte BTC, nice. We looked at this one back here when I think a couple live streams ago people were asking about it. It was already on the move, and man, what a move it has been. The question now is, does this turn into a double top on Digibyte? Very interesting to see, but no doubt on a tear, and I have no idea what's driving that. I've not kept up with this project one bit, so I'm not following it, not going, not sure what's happening there. And honestly, I don't even trade on Bittrex or anything, so I just have not paid attention to it. But nice for those of you that have, very nice. Question there on any idea what that BMI strategy is? Yeah, so the BMI, it's a two-part answer. So the BMI is the Bull Momentum Index. It's a proprietary indicator which I developed, and it's it was developed specifically for crypto. I've not done a lot of back testing in terms of some of the other markets, but it's certainly been fine-tuned for some of the crypto markets. And what we do is we use it matrix here, right? So we look at it across multiple time frames, and that produces this kind of bullish, bearish kind of point of view. And then in addition to that, around that particular indicator, I've developed some trading strategies, some bot strategies, and for both 4-hour and daily. You also get that for the altcoins here. If you look at the trading bot status, this is again the big cap names. So, you know, Cardano, ETH, Atom. I've got about 17 names on here. And this is the trading pairs versus Bitcoin. So ADA BTC, BAT BTC. And it basically gives you those same metrics there, right? So bull momentum rating and 4-hour bot status, daily bot status for those particular names. And you can see it's pretty much red. Stellar Lumens is still long on the daily. Cardano still long on the daily, but everything else is either flat or short. So just clearly painting a picture of the recent rally that BTC has had versus some of these altcoins. Cardano had been long for quite some time, finally pulling back here on that daily chart. And what was the other one? Stellar Lumens. Stella still showing long there on the daily chart or the daily bot status, and yeah, the chart's still holding up so far. But you could argue there's a little bit of head and shoulder forming here on this 4-hour point of view, kind of gone sideways, a little bit choppy, sloppy looking, no doubt. I hope that answered the question a little bit there. Let's see what else do we got going on here. I'm gonna go back to the trending list and then we'll see the alerts next. Zill's been on a tear lately. Name from yesteryear. Zilliqa, nice little rally there. Again, low volume name, a lot tougher to trade these in my opinion, but similar to some of these other ones, right? They've been basing, long-term basing for such a long time that when they finally start closing out of these ranges, get into the upside, that's going to be a big break from a longer-term perspective. And you could be seeing that here in a lot of names. But again, Zill has attempted that several times. You can see these big moves right into that range. But until it starts to really hold above that, then things might get going. Above that, right, you've got several levels. And many of these names have that where the moves could be pretty big because there's a lot of room to run after that. Big targets on the way up. So, you know, that's what you're waiting for is kind of these breakouts above these little zones before they really get going. Tezos. Let's go look at Tezos BTC here. Oh, look at that. Tezos rallied right to the resistance level and has since been pulling back. And so this was nice because Tezos broke out of this little symmetrical pattern, also broke the downtrend that I had already highlighted here. And look at where it hit, basically right to the target that I highlighted during that live stream. So it's always interesting to see that happen, but it's kind of just been in pullback mode since then. Don't know if it's done, but at this point, I'm not sure I'd be a dip buyer until I actually saw it turn the corner there. Link BTC here. Again, Link cannot overcome this resistance here on the BTC pair. Has been in pullback mode. Is this a fib level? This might be. Let's go look at that. Could be a level to be watching. Oh man, almost exactly. You can see the 618 retracement right there. It'd be interesting to see if it holds there and really starts to bounce from here. Could be the end of the pullback. Maybe. How does it look on the USD side? I always like to compare both, especially some of the bigger names, just because they tend to trade around some USD support resistance levels as well. So some of those I'll examine both. And in this case, yeah, this is real interesting. If it holds that 618 level on the BTC pair, I'd be watching out for a break above this $4 mark. Holding above $4, that's a pretty solid breakout at that point, considering this little ascending base we're seeing. But on the flip side of that, right, you have a very clear trend running on here, and if it starts to lose, I mean, let's make it easy and just call it, I mean, I'd be watching the moving averages personally, but if it starts to lose, call it 350, then probably look out below. That'd be my opinion. All right. what else is happening in crypto land here? So YouTube continues to censor videos. Tonevay's got a haircut. The halving's coming up. XRP's being dumped. Pretty much the same thing. Not a whole lot has changed. Twitter's mad, insane as always. So yeah, we'll see. I hope you guys are doing well in this quarantine world that we are living in. Just strange times out there to be sure, for sure. Let's see what we got going on here on the alerts. So we've got some pocket pivots, dragon on the move, Numir. Oh my god, there's a name from yesteryear. Waves, man, waves. Let's go see waves. Waves BTC here. Ish, nothing to look at there. Got land, pocket pivot, a lot of small cap names, man. Aeon. Just kind of a lot of noise there in terms of trading happening. Aeon's interesting here, to be honest. I kind of like this one here. I'd be watching this little setup. It's trying to get over some resistance here. It's put in a few lows. All right, you had this swing low, swing lows, trying to make a higher low here, test resistance, getting over that 1090 BTC pair. That'd be interesting. I'd be watching that one there. KSM on the move, BTC UBIC. Oh my gosh, some of those tickers, man. The fact that I remember all those tickers is scary in and of itself. I remember when I used to do these. We used to do these stock trading kind of investment clubs, and it was a strange language. We'd go to these meetings and we would just all talk in tickers, and we all knew what we were saying. It's just like here, right? People, you come here and people know what they're talking about. It's very interesting. IOTA. So yeah, not a whole lot there on some of these other names. So any other names you guys want to look at? BCH. Oh man, there's a name from yesteryear. Is BCH officially done? I mean, look at this. Not pretty. Versus BTC here. I don't see a whole lot of shilling of the BCH anymore these days, other than, you know, one or two highly vested individuals, but in general you don't see it a whole lot anymore. Dash, that's the weekly. I'm gonna go to the daily, but still not pretty there on Dash. Couldn't overcome this resistance there. Engine was on a tear, pulling back. This one's interesting. I'd be watching Engine here. It's finally pulled right back to this breakout point. It'd be interesting to see if you get most likely you'll get at least a secondary rally, but does it turn into kind of a new high type of rally? That's going to be interesting. So ENJ, yeah, old school UBIC and ARC, no doubt. Let's see, Ethereum Classic trying to show some life here. Apparently it hit the trending list. Let's see if we can get going there. Icon, yeesh, trying to turn the corner there, but no love for Icon as of late. These are BTC pairs, by the way. IOTA, maybe double bottom, needs to confirm. We already looked at Link. Decentraland, range bound, Neo, range bound, Raven, Stellar. We looked at Monero. How's Monero going? Oh, finally gave up the ghost. Monero. Zcash following suit. 0x. Yeah, versus Bitcoin, it's been a tough go out there lately for some of these names here. Tron, yeah, just kind of range bound versus Bitcoin there. So let's go look at the market there and just take a look at some of the stocks, the big cap names, and then we will wrap it up. So thanks for being here as always. Looking at the SPY, you know, today was an interesting day because it opened a gap down and actually finished positive, which technically is bullish, but it's below Friday's, you know, open anyway, so you take that with a grain of salt. Generally, when something opens a gap down and closes in the green, that tends to lead to some follow through to the upside. So it wouldn't surprise me if near term we get some retesting of this and maybe even some gap filling of that. But in the big picture, if you go to the weekly chart, it's still below the big targets that I was looking at on the weekly. The 1022 EMA is what I was looking for. It did fill this gap that I was looking for there. So that's kind of all happened now. The big question is, do we finally get that retracement that people are looking for, right? This secondary test, this pullback, and that's going to say a lot. Does it just bounce and then get going and stimulus kicks in, or does it just kind of the slow grind down? Personally, I mean, this is just pure speculation, in my opinion. Personally, would not surprise me if you see something like this play out where it kind of does this, fakes people out, does one of these, and then it's a slow grind, which ultimately makes new lows, new relative lows compared to the climactic low we saw. And the reason I say that is because you've seen that in the past where you get these panic moves down, and then you get a pretty good retracement, and then people think, okay, we're out of the woods, it's just going to start basing from here. And it's just kind of like the slow grind, bearish grind down, right? It's not the roller coaster drop, but it's more of the disbelief. We're still going lower, we're still going lower, we're still going lower. And then at some point, it finally cracks, and then you get the panic drop as people start to capitulate and say, oh, crap, here we go, more new lows, right? And so that's what I'm looking for personally. And if that scenario plays out, it's a long road to get there. It's not a, June, we're going to make new lows. Could be, but I'm thinking it's kind of the grind, the reset that sets up ultimately for a new bull market. This, keep in mind, has been a historic rally, and it needs to be digested. The moves was just tremendous, and I just don't think that was it, personally. I don't think that the panic low we saw was it. The damage economically is just so severe at this point that it's going to be a tough recovery, in my opinion. Unless you start to get massive inflation and all that stuff from the dollars being printed, then that changes things, because stocks tend to hold up well during those times as people, flee fiat and they try to buy assets. But looking at some of the other names, it's interesting to see how some of these have rallied. I mean, AMD came right back to the highs on that bounce. Is it forming a double top here? Who knows? But it's just bounced right back to the highs. Obviously things like Amazon are doing well. Facebook did pretty good on their earnings report, almost right back to the highs. So Techland is doing great. But then you look at other things, right? So look at the housing markets, not quite as strong. You look at financials, nowhere near as strong. Obviously travel and leisure, right? So it's certainly a mixed market up there. It's very much a stock picking market again. It's not a just blindly buy everything because we're in this raging bull. I think those days are over for now. I think you got to be a little bit more judicious in terms of where you select, what sectors you go for. Are you going to buy oil, right? Like, who would have thought? So, the XLE is getting smashed. It's bouncing a little bit, but you got to be a little bit more picky, in my opinion. I don't think it's an across the board, just blindly buy the spies and you're off to the races. That's just my opinion. I hope I'm wrong, right? Best case scenario is I'm wrong, this thing comes roaring back and we're at new high ground. Fantastic. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that, but we'll see how that plays out for now. Going back to the BTC side of things, where are we at here? 89, just kind of vacillating here back and forth. So, as I said at the start of the stream, there's a couple key levels to be watching. You can certainly say this is a little bit of a symmetrical setup starting to form here. And those are the two levels I'd be watching. Holding above that 91.50 on the 4-hour chart looks bullish. Holding below that 85.30, 85.40, that's a bearish break, technically speaking. So I'd be watching that. But near term, I'm a little bit more inclined to watch this little bounce happening right now. And if it breaks below this trend line, you can even tighten that up here if you go to the hourly charts. But breaking below that, probably not too good there. I think we would see a retest at this level at least. So. All right, let me see what else here. Just checking out the comments. Appreciate the stream. Thumbs up. Going on 40 minutes here, so thinking that's gonna be it for now. I think I've answered most of the questions here. Daily and weekly, for sure, daily and weekly chart has been your friend, no doubt. I mean, I think the higher time frames have proven to be much more useful after that big drop we saw. Initially, the shorter time frames was the way to go for trading, because when you have a drop that's that drastic, you just gotta zoom way in because things are just so dislocated. But then after a while, they settle out, and then yeah, you kind of zoom back out to the bigger picture. My personal is I tend to rely on the daily and the 4 hour the most in terms of just kind of setting the tone for things. I'll use the 1 hour points of view, but a little bit more from a tactical perspective, right? I'll use that more for just kind of narrowing the precise entry and exit points. But from a big picture view, kind of setting targets, looking at the trend, all that good stuff, daily and 4 hour tend to be my friend. But again, that's just my trading style, right? If you're doing high leverage and margin and all that stuff, you probably gotta dial it in a little bit closer. Okay. I'm thinking that's gonna be it here. Sorry, I'm not gonna pull that one up on a different platform here for now. But yep, the halving. I will. When is this? May 12th. That is next Tuesday, my Tuesday afternoon, evening-ish. We'll see. So yeah, I'll probably be doing a live stream like many others during that time. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see how the market reacts. Personally, I'm not expecting a big fireworks show or anything during the halving. I think we've seen a big run up into that. You might get a little bit more juice, but then I'm thinking we get a pullback after that, and then the big rally begins. Just my thoughts. So we'll see how it goes. But you know, for now, those are the levels to be watching near term on the BTC side of things. I'm thinking maybe we get some alt bounce finally after some of those pullbacks. If we missed it, links interesting to watch here for sure. Obviously, Zill's been on a tear. I think we looked at Aeon. We looked at a handful of others. Cardano pulling back on that daily chart on the BTC pair, holding up its own on the USD side. So I'd be watching for some of these to start bouncing again. So there's certainly things out there worth noting. ETH USD still very much in this broader channel. It needed to pull back. It's been in pullback mode versus Bitcoin. So, you know, for now, the trend is your friend until it ends. So thanks guys for the comments as always, the interaction. I appreciate it. I'll see you all on the next one. Take care everyone.